Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. Fernando.
Welcome to the show, guys.
You ready for this, man?
Oh, yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. Why not?
I don't know.
This is fun.
Okay. Today we have a vehicle that we haven't seen in the install bay in a long time, which is why we're filming it. Depending on how this next year goes,
that's right.
This may never exist ever again. And I think it has been ended of life. Ended of life? End of life. Yeah, no, I don't think they make it anymore. Yeah, no, that's what the owner told me. Anyways, I know you're going, what is it? Because it's definitely not an F-150. It is
Lamborghini Titan.
This is a 2022 Nissan Titan, and it is in today for some awesome audio upgrades. This is a base audio system inside of it, and what I mean by that is let's hop in and take a look, and I'll show you. We have speakers located here in the door. There are speakers located in the corners of the dash. There's nothing on the A pillar in the base audio system. Has a big touch screen. Metra does make a dash kit for this, so if you are interested in replacing radio, you can do that. There is a Fox box available for it, which is going to go in. We're putting two 10s underneath the seat, and those two 10s are these guys right here. We're putting in some Rockford Punch P2s with grills, so we get tons of bass. One of the nice things is there is a premium audio system available for this by Fender. The only problem is that A pillars come in black for the Fender system, and the factory non-Fender, they're this light gray color, but everything else matches that A pillar. He went on and ordered these so that we could do a three-way set up front, and that is this set right here. We're doing a set of Focal Flax three-ways. The whole system is going to be powered by the Arc Audio Blackbird. We'll be doing some sound treatment with fast strings. We are adding a bass knob. We'll be making a bunch of custom brackets for this and whatnot. But first, we need to
selfie.
Click. But first we need to get inside the vehicle and kind of come up with a plan for how we're going to do this. This is a front stage upgrade only, meaning the rear speakers are not part of the system. We're going to fading it to the front. We're not going to disconnect them. We're just going to fade it to the front. That way if he does have somebody in the vehicle or something in the back, he can still access them if he needs them for whatever reason. Plus then we don't have to load resist down the rear channels. So that's a bonus too. And the front's going to be so loud you probably won't even hear him anyways.
That is correct.
Let's hop inside and kind of talk about what we're thinking as far as a plan goes. Looking up underneath the driver's seat, there is a ton of room. The reason for that is usually this is where the factory subwoofer will go. Our subwoofer is going to go here underneath the back seat. It does have this big tray that is coming out, and there's lots of bolts that go through the floor. If you are going to be pulling out a tray of any kind, make sure that you either put the bolt back in so that water doesn't get up through it, and or you put something over the hole so water doesn't get back up through it. That's important. Don't forget to do that. With the amplifier up underneath the front seat, we are planning out how we are going to attach to this front set of speakers. The reason why we're debating on this is in order to get this radio out, it is a lot of work. It's kind of like all the other old Nissan vehicles where you end up pulling out way more than you need, meaning I got to pull this underside, that underside, the glove box, the center console to do it properly so that we can pull the whole dash out. Really all we need is this speaker wire and that speaker wire. So we're debating on which way we want to go. If we just want to grab the wires here in the kicks and run our amplifier out to it, or if we go up the center console and have everything planned out just in case, and let's say 2 or 3 years, another year, he removes the radio and puts a new radio in. That's a possibility. He's going to keep this truck for a while, so that guy might need to come out. And since there's a dash kit, there's a really good possibility. The reason why we decided to go up underneath the driver's seat instead of the passenger seat, because the battery is located here on the passenger side of the vehicle and not over here on the driver's side of the vehicle. In some cases, it would make sense that this battery's here, shorter power wire, go up underneath there. However, the air conditioning box is really in the way here on the passenger side, and that makes it kind of difficult to run the power wire through. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. We can easily come across this area here with our power wire and attach it here to the battery. There's also a grommet already located in this area, which kind of makes it make sense.
The previous year we always go in this side, but it's a hassle to actually make it work. We might drill a new hole in that one. I don't want to use the grommet.
No, there's a second grommet.
I saw it.
Yeah.
But you see the big one, big space in the metal. So yeah, depends how it goes as soon as we start taking it apart.
The reason why we're thinking about removing the radio and just going the way that we would normally go is because of this one thing, only one. And that is this little knockout right here. This would be a great place to put the bass knob. You know, nice and simple. Could be enough room, might not be enough room, don't know, we'll have to find out. But that would be nice. Otherwise, you know, we could put it somewhere over there or whatnot, maybe here, I don't know. But this just begs for a knob.
Now, keep in mind, sometimes you have these part and it's a whole circuit board that you cannot take apart.
Right.
So it's like a 50-50 chance. We might be able to, we might not. But we're gonna give it a shot, right?
Yep. And apparently now while we're filming, they've decided to mow the grass.
Dude, my allergies are killing me.
Would you like a Zyrtec?
I already took two.
I'm gonna take one now. All right. Let's get going, shall we? Now, before I start pulling the dash apart, I want to kind of get an idea of how to do it, because Metro does make a dash kit for this, which, if you look up the 2022, it's not there. It's in the 2020, 2021. They probably didn't validate it, which totally makes sense. Either way, we're not doing it, but I still want the instructions, and MetroOnline.com has some of the best. So for this, the kit is the 957639, and if I scroll up here, it walks me through the process of what I need to do to get that bad boy out of there. So let's hop in the truck and start doing that. So according to the instructions, we have to start over here by removing this panel. Then we remove the glove box. There's 5 screws that are holding this, 3 across the top, 2 on the bottom. Little side panels over here on the left and right side of the unit need to come out. And there's a Phillips screw. That is going to be part of this center console. The other thing that needs to come out is this little controller here that just lifts up. These are the seat heaters. The seats do need to move forward because there is a screw located in the back. It is a 12mm bolt. There's one on the driver and the passenger side. With all 4 of the side screws out, remove the little piece here, and there are the 2 remaining screws. Now the whole center console should just lift back out of place. And there's no wiring in it other than the seat heaters. Now with that out of the way, we can get the dash off. If we start here on the bottom, and then just gently work our way up through the top. Plastic pry tool, probably a good idea. There is a hook here that needs to be lifted up and then removed. The airbag light is also located here. The thing you have to know about Nissans, if you turn the car on with the airbag light unplugged, you will get an airbag light. This uses a small torque screw. All you have to do is remove and leave it plugged in and you'll be okay. After I remove the screws, because they're so tiny, I like to just put them back into the panel. But with this disconnected, I don't have to worry about it. Just tuck it back into the dash. There are 3 screws on this side that look like it takes the whole panel off. Repeat the process on the driver's side. This has the push to start. There's 2 little clips on the side that you just push in and the whole module will come out. Plug it back into place. This also has that same safety clip in the side. There's 3 screws on this side also. Start with the bottom, then move to the air conditioner. At first look, we're probably going to be able to put our bass knob here. It just depends on how big the Arc Audio bass knob is, but this panel does come out. There's 2 more screws located down here at the bottom. Really all we're looking for on this is just the main wiring harness, which is located down here. We don't need to unplug all of this since we're not pulling the radio out. I'm just gonna snap it back into place right now. and head over to the laptop and see what my part number is for the T-harness. Looks like the part should be the LPH NI03. Let's give it a shot. My power harness is located in the bottom driver's side corner of the radio. You get a click, that's a bonus. We get a click there. This is an older version of the harness. The newer versions have clips that connect it all together. We don't do a lot of Nissans, that's why we still have the older version in stock. But as long as I don't have to cut the factory harness, I'm good. Anytime I use a harness like this, I like to just do a quick check to make sure that this is in fact my speaker wires. That is the driver's rear speaker, and that is the driver's front speaker. This is the harness we are going to need. The nice thing about these harnesses is that everything is pinned, so as long as your speaker wires are in the right location, you're golden. I'm plugging the factory radio harness back in for now, because I do need to do some modifications to this older harness. It has all these extra wires coming off of it that I really don't need, but we'll talk about that later on the bench. We'll go through this and make it usable for this particular application. Validation was the purpose right now, and since we're validating, see if we can get this knockout out of here. It is kind of tiny. Let's take it over to the bench and see if it will work for our bass knob, or if we need to go another route. So true to front stage upgrade on this, one of the most important speakers to get to is the mid bass in the door. And here to tell us how to do that is Fernando.
Hi guys, my name is Fernando, and I want to show you how you take your door panel out on a 2022 Nissan Titan.
You had to think about that one for a minute?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
We don't do a lot at Nissan, so you know, kind of get familiar with it. Normally what you're trying to do is pay attention of the panels, the screws on the bottom, on the side. Sometimes they have lights, sometimes the screws are on the lights. In this situation, we know there is a screw behind the door handle. Is the screw here where you pull the door, and let's go and remove that. For that, we're gonna use a flat screwdriver. Just kind of pop it. The factory has a notch. It's literally, you can go with a small flathead, so don't try to grab a bigger flathead, you're gonna mess up the plastic. As we say, we have a 10mm in there. Remove it. The next one, it's a cover right here, same thing. As you see, grab a flathead, just grab one corner, pick whatever, and we have another 10mm in there. Now this is the tricky part because we don't see anymore. At that point we can start pulling out. See, grab a plastic pry tool. I love this one. If you want to pick one of these, DNF tool drawer. And normally in this kind of trim, it's like another screw, but we're gonna grab a flat pry tool. We're gonna go to this corner. As you see, like as soon as you remove this one, you see how loose is the plastic. So that means this one doesn't have to come out. So grab it over here, as you see right there. See, it comes out. And take your time, don't go crazy. You don't want to break anything. Go around. See it right there. And then comes out. Unplug door switches. And I was telling you, see, there's two more screws, 2 10mm in there that is actually holding the whole door panel. Now we're gonna try again. And as you see, everything is nice and loose. Now we're gonna pull up, disconnect your cables, If you had lights, same thing, but this one comes out with the whole thing. So put your door panel in a safe place and remove your door speaker. To do that, grab your flat screwdriver, unplug the harness. Now that it's loose, grab your 10mm.
Let's go take this over to the bench and see what we're gonna replace it with. For speakers, we're going with the Focal Flax PS165 F3E 3-way set. Let's take a look in the box and see what we get. The first thing are these little guys here in the corner. These are the passive crossovers. We're not gonna be using them because we're going full active. So we can just stuff that back there. There's two of them located at either end of the box. Next up are the tweeters. This is the TAM tweeter. They also call it the coffee tweeter because it has this nice little coffee look to it. These are designed to pop off of here, and the grill will also come off. We always keep this on until the very last moment. We have the very small mid-range Neo Magnet on the back, aluminum basket, flax seed cone, butyl rubber surround, and then the mid-base, flax cone, rubber surround, aluminum basket, very sexy driver. These things are gonna sound amazing in the doors of the truck. These will be up in the dash and these will be in the A-pillar. We have to make locations for those. But to start with, let's take a look at the factory speaker that we're gonna replacing this mid-range with. It is this guy right here. This is the factory 6x9. One of the things that's really unique about it is it is super deep. And the reason for that is the door, there's like a hole this big that this thing has to go through. Now when we look at this and compare the two, as we can see, this thing is super deep compared to this. We're gonna need all of this space in order to make this work. I mean, just sitting on the bench, this is taller than that. This is gonna make things interesting. Metro makes these brackets here, the 827402. It is a 6x9 bracket, and when compared to the factory, you can see it's maybe half, maybe 2/3. Either way, if you're planning on putting a 6x9 in the door, find a very shallow one because it's not going to have a lot of room to do that. Let me show you what I mean. As you can see here, it's a very tiny hole. The window's right here. The track to move it up and down is also in there. The plan for this is to, of course, not use this because if I have to make something, I might as well make the whole thing. We are going to make a new bracket. We're going to use this bracket as the template because it'll be easier than using this because I have to do weird things. So I'll just attach this. Let's head over to the router and get an idea of what we're going to build, how big it needs to be, and how we're going to make this 6.5 fit in the door. For this bottom piece of the speaker, we're going to start with some 1/4 inch. The goal is to make both of these at the same time. We use our Mobile Solutions double-sided template tape. Set our router height, lock it into place. Add in the screw holes, remove the front piece. Next we need to know how deep this needs to be. I've put this on the door and put the speaker in the center to see if this is deep enough, and it is. This is 1.5 inches. Our factory is 2 1/4. So the end result is we want to be 2 1/4, but we only need 1.5 inches to bring this out. Pieces we use are 1/2 inch. I need 3 pieces, but I already have 1/4 inch, and it's okay because I can go up to 2 1/4 inch. And then I want to build a front piece on it, just like this has, this front lip. The simple math would be I need 4 pieces of 1/2 inch to create this spacer to this height. This spacer here is a 6.5 inch spacer that we made for a Focal that is the right diameter here. and the right outside here. We made this using the laser. We have made them in the past using the Mobile Solutions speaker ring, which really is the next best thing if you don't have a laser. Makes life so much easier. This is the 1/2 inch material that we'll be using, which is blown PVC. Let's get started. We need 8 squares that are 7 by 7. We have all 8. Cut them in half. We can work on 2 at a time. Alright, that gets us 1 inch. And that takes us to 1.5 inch. What we need to do now is remove 1/4 inch off of this so we can inset the speaker. For that, we're gonna use this router over here that has our big Mobile Solutions routing bit in it. This allows us to put a ball bearing on the bit so that we can cut out the space that this lip requires in order to sit down inside of it. You can see we have this bearing here. So this distance between this bearing and this is the exact distance between that area there and the outside flange. It doesn't matter which side I choose. Open up my vacuum. Now we have that groove cut in. Our basket is flush with the top of this. That's gonna get us right to 2 1/4. Next step is for this guy here. To make the top piece, I've routed out 2 more of our spacers. Right here. I need to do a couple things to this. I need to add some roundovers to it. Now these roundovers are for the inside here. So that's gonna sit on top of the driver just like this. And that'll give me just a little bit of extra room for when the speaker flexes. This guy will go on top of it. And it's gonna sit in there just like this. We'll center it up. Next step is adding this to this so we can do the final assembly over on the bench. With the pieces stuck together to give us our final shape, the last thing I want to do is add a roundover to the inside back here. Gives it a nice finished look, and with that, let's head over to the bench for our final assembly. I like to use screws to attach all the plastic together to make one big solid piece. Put a thin layer of foam on the back of the speaker. For this, I have to make sure that the speaker plugs here are running in this direction because of that hole. So we'll just put the Focal logo here on the bottom. All right, with that on there, and our trim ring needs to go on top of this, put a piece of foam around the outside edge. That'll sit on top of it just like that. I need to make sure to put screw holes on this that don't line up with the screws that I just put in. They're kind of like here and there. Alright, that gets us some foam on the front for where the door panel is going to sit against it, and it gets us some foam on the back. Comparing it to our factory, as far as depth goes, we're right where we need to be, 2 1/4 inches. Obviously this is going to sit up a little higher. Now it's time to get over the car and get this screwed into place. For these front doors, we're doing what we call our stage 1 sound treatment package, and that's comprised of half a sheet of Stealth Roadkill. That's going to be butyl with aluminum, as well as half a sheet of Ultimate, which is going to be butyl, aluminum, and foam. Fernando, how do we separate the two?
This one is designed to go in the outer skin of the door, like this one, and then also in the inside of the door. The foam, we're not gonna use it in this one. We're actually gonna use it on the actually door panel, because it's the one that is gonna start flexing and moving. We're gonna use that one because it has the foam and it's gonna prevent that.
Now with the magic of video, here we go, 1, 2.
And this is how we install sound treatment on a car. Few layers on the back, like we talk about, and we focus on the speaker side. We also install fast ring, especially when you're trying to do a fast ring. Make sure you roll up and down your window, because you don't want to get caught the plug into your window. So make sure it's perfect clearance. Second plug, also, as you see, you have to cut it.
Basically what you're saying is worry about the window.
For sure, because you don't want to install this and then your window's gonna knock it out and you don't even know, because
well, you'll know when all the glue sticks to the window.
Right. Now we can install the speaker using our factory screws. 1, 2, 3, and the bottom 4. Everything is clear. If you notice, you will see like, oh my god, this is a huge speaker bracket. It might hit the door. No, as Dean was talking and explained, the factory speaker, that's actually the same thickness. We talk about fast rings, right? With this one, we're not gonna use the fast ring because the actually ring of the PVC is acting as a fast ring for us. The plastic is gonna rest on the foam, it's gonna push all the sound through the grill. This is the second part of the sound treatment, the ultimate. We focus on this part right here. As you see, just put the door back the same way you took it out. And this is what the speaker looks like through the grill. As you see, perfect clearance. Everything is good. Put the screw back together and we're done.
And with the doors done, that's time to move on to the next set of speakers, which are the 2 up in the dash. Getting those in is going to be interesting because the factory speaker is actually smaller than the speaker we're going to be putting in. I keep calling it like a 2.5. The focal is actually a 3.5. Let's hop into the car. We'll show you how to get this apart, and then we'll talk to you about the speakers.
Remember the 2-inch from the factory. In some cars, the only thing you have to do is pry out the grill. In this situation, it's not the case. In this one, you have to remove the whole A-pillar and you have to remove the dash band. Grab your pry tool, carefully remove the covers. We know it's 210 millimeters. I know you're taking the right side and the left side, so make sure you have a bend for each side so you don't get confused. Grab your pry tool, plastic, just carefully. This is loose. Sometimes you have to remove the door seal just to give it more space. Now wiggle it back and forth, comes out. Now in this one, sometimes it pops out. Don't worry, it's just a clip. You can put it back. As you see right here, this is what I was talking about. It's A-pillar actually sits on top of the grill. So now we're gonna remove the vent. Grab your pry tool, just go around. Sometimes it's hard, but that's why we have multiple pry tools. As you see, this one comes out. Disconnect any plugs that you have. Sometimes you gotta use like a pigtail or a flat screwdriver. Remove it and plug your sensor back in, just in case you turn the car on, everything is plugged in and you don't have to worry about it. You can go around the speaker, same thing, grab a corner. As you see, these 2 clips are so necessary because it takes so hard to take it out, but it's out. Now removing the speaker, it's a 3/7 millimeter, or you can use a regular Phillips screw. Always be careful with your windshield. You don't want to break it or scratch it. And there you go.
Let's take these over to the bench and we'll compare them to what we're gonna replace them with. This is our full cal mid-range. It's 3.47 inches across, and this guy is not. This guy is a lot smaller. Hole pattern wise, they line up. Like this should be a spot on, but if it was a flat area, then we'd be okay, and it's not. Let's head over into the car and we'll take a look at what this little paper, yeah, this thing is trash. Like, I don't think I've ever taken one of these that isn't trash. Paper, this is cloth, small magnet, little 47 microcapacitor. Let's go. This is the area that we are looking to put our speaker in. We have this trim ring here, this trim bezel here, this little nub sticking out. This is around here, which is nice, but we're still not gonna be able to get our speaker in. To test our theory, the problem that we're having, I lasered out a ring that is the exact size of our speaker, and it sits here, and as you can see, it's going to be a problem. What do we do to make it work? The first thing that makes sense is we need to remove some of this stuff here. Then we can figure out how to make the hole round so our speaker will drop into place. The goal in all of this is to get that speaker into the dash, and to look something like this. So how did we get there? We need some tools. Specifically, we need this tool. This is not for the faint at heart. Remove the 3 metal clips. All right, we've removed all of that high area there. That will allow this ring to now sit flat in our area, just like so. And we need to mark with a Sharpie what needs to come out. For this next part, we'll be using this angle grinder to get into this area. The only thing I can say is go slow, take your time. There's no hurry on this one. Our speaker will now fit into place. It drops right in. Great news. That's what we were hoping for. Now we need to make the cover that goes over the top of this so that we can lock it into place. Before we can test fit our adapter, we need to modify the grill as well as the dash. This is the driver's side that we've already modified. The nice thing would be to just take a grinder and grind this all off. The only problem with doing that is you'll get little balls of plastic that form inside of the grills, and it's hot, so it'll stick. So we don't want to do that. Definitely don't want to do that. So that leaves us the painstaking process of basically surgically removing all of this off of here. It's not as bad as you think. It just does take some time. Now, there's no beautiful way to say, hey, let's do that. What you need is a really sharp razor knife, some flush cutters. What we're gonna do is just start by simply cutting away the part that is in our way, just like so. And do that throughout the whole piece. And after about 20 minutes of painstaking labor, we were able to remove all of that and keep the grill looking as pristine as it should. Now it's time to test fit our bracket and see if it fits. Then we'll go back and explain how we made the bracket. But first, let's jump into the car. Put the speaker into the hole. Our lockdown goes into place next, followed by our grill. Everything fits under the grill, which is exactly how we want it to go. The material that we're using for this stuff is 1/8 inch acrylic. Still has the paper on it. To remove the paper, we'll just take another piece of acrylic and it will just peel right off. This is 2 pieces that were glued together. That's why the paper is still on there, so that the glue doesn't get onto the shiny part of the acrylic that we want to see, that nobody will ever see. Now, they are slightly different between the driver and the passenger, but not enough to where we have to redesign the panel. The only difference is it needed to be rounded over and it needed to be sanded a little bit flatter over here. Once we did that, we sanded it and then we polished it so that it would look just as shiny as the rest of it, and this will sit over our speaker. But how did we get to this weird shape? I mean, it's pretty peculiar. The first thing we needed to do was create this. This is a copy of the outside flange of the speaker. It has the screw holes where they need to be and everything. And it's almost as thick as the speaker itself as far as this goes. This allowed us to take this guy and set it out of the picture, and then we could work with this shape here and figure out what we needed to do with the dash. What needed to be removed, and then we removed it. And then we took our phone and placed this into the dash, and then we took a picture of what this looked like in the dash. It gave us two things. One, what this area that we have to work with is, and two, we were able to scale it to size so we could then create a scaled version of this design. From there, we imported it into our CAD software, Amadine. We use a Mac. It's inexpensive drawing software that you can get your hands on. And that allowed us to then create this shape right here. This shape is this, but then taking up all of that extra space that we saw from the picture. And we knew this was going to be wrong, and so we made this out of cardstock. That then turned into this. Once we figured out, hey, this isn't going to work, we need to remove some of this. That also gave us this area here that we knew needed to be removed because the grill has a little tooth that goes there. So that brought us into this guy here. Now we have the area for the tooth, we have the other side of the grill, and we're like, cool, this is great. But then again, this tooth needs to move a little bit when going in. So we said, hey, forget it. Let's just remove the whole corner, and that'll give us the shape we need. Once we did that, then we needed to be able to create a lip for the speaker to sit inside. We don't want to just put this on top of it like this and hope for the best. We want to lock this into place, make it have something that would bring it down into it. So we cut out all these extra shapes and then glued them onto here. And that got us to this, which is the final version of it. This will sit just like this. We'll put 4 screws into it and bolt it down into the dash. The one other thing we need to do to this still is we're going to put foam all over the back side of this because the speaker is actually just a hair deeper than this piece here. That was by design so that we could put foam on this, and then when we tighten this down, it'll lock the speaker into place, giving us a perfect fit like that. One other thing we did in order to make it easier to glue these little pieces on is we scored our piece of plastic. In doing that, it makes it easy to remove this piece here, and now we can set our new piece of acrylic on here and we can glue it without getting glue all inside of this. Join me in the car and we'll get this thing screwed into place.
I went and prepped all my wires for the passenger side. We're using yellow and a gray for the tweeter, and we're using gray and a blue for the mid-range. I went and put my fish under the dash so I can have access to it. I'm just gonna tape. I went and make the mid-range shorter than the tweeter. The reason why is because this one is gonna set in here and the tweeter wire is gonna come out 6-10 inches probably from the mid-range. So now we're gonna put the ends and put the speakers, and that's it.
The reason why we're running the wires from the center of the dash as opposed to from the under seat is we find it's easier just to have all our wires come to a central location, and then we will make the connection there. It's time to connect up the speaker and screw it into place. The speaker will sit down in, and then our locking ring will come on top of it. We have some very small screws, these guys right here, that are going to screw this into place. There you have it. The speaker is screwed into place. Locking ring is holding it down. The last step is to put the grill back in. And there you have it. Grill in place, speakers are in. Can't see anything from the top. Next, we need to get the tweeter put back in. Now looking at this A-pillar, there is this whole big area right here that is perfect for a tweeter. And more than likely you can take this, which is the tweeter we're using, which is the flax. We could set it right here and we could cut it in and it would be fine. It would be fine. It would do the job and it would look like there's a tweeter on there. We could also make a grill. However, there's always a budget to consider. All of that takes time. This doesn't take any time. This just looks like you cut a tweeter in it, so there's no time involved there. I'm not a fan of this. I don't really like it. So then I would want to make a grill, and that's where the budget comes in. How much is it going to take to do that compared to if I just bought the factory piece? You can typically find these, in which he did. You can find them for about 80 to 90 bucks, which is way cheaper than me building a grill here. Now the downside is that this is black, this is gray, and his handles are going to be gray instead of black, and he can replace those if he wants, but the car is two-tone anyway, so I don't think it's really going to matter much. With that though, we now have this cool factory grill installed and in place, and the only thing we have to make is the mount to take our Focal tweeter and adapt it to this area here. Nissan has made it easier by just making them 2 Phillips screws to get the tweeter out. The grill does not come off because it is plastic welded in place. We do have some batting on here that's going to get in the way and make it annoying, but this is the factory tweeter that would come with the fender system. It looks to be about a 1-inch tweeter. It's silk, probably an okay sounding tweeter. It's got the capacitor on it, and we're gonna of course put the TAM tweeter in there, and for the most part it's going to line right up into place just like so. What we need to do is we need to make a bracket that allows us to mount this into place just like the factory, meaning screw it down. So just like we did with our dash speaker, we need to make a cardboard template that is going to fit in this location. In the past we've showed you where we set this on a flatbed scanner and traced it out. Fairly easy to do, but there's always more than one way to design something like this, in which case this is what we want it to look like. Another way of doing that is to just use your phone. Now this is an iPhone, and in the middle of the phone there's this X right here, and when the X lights up yellow, that means it's perfectly flat. There is some disadvantages to using your phone to take a picture, and that is the camera lens is going to shoot out like this. If you have something that is in that angle, you're going to lose that detail. That's where a flatbed scanner is a little bit more useful because it comes across like this and will pick up that detail. For this, we don't have a ton of detail in the place, so we'll just go over here until we get it nice and level. I'm going to put it right on the dot in the center of the tweeter, and take the picture. Now, as we all know, I'm an Apple guy. One of the things that I like about being an Apple guy is I can now just grab this photo, go to export, and it sees my MacBook Air, tap it, and it's automatically going to send it over to my laptop, and I can immediately start working with it. I'll launch my Amidine app. It's set up for the size of my laser. I like to put the photo as its own layer. Create a circle. It is 1.577. I like to make the colors that are going to go on top of the surface as bright as possible. Makes them easier to see. And once we've scaled the image to the size of our tweeter, we can now draw on it and create the geometry we need in order to make this a bracket. We need an arm here and a second arm located here. We want to make sure that this is thick enough so that the tweeter doesn't twist. Alright, so that gives us our basic outline. Don't pay attention to the shape on the inside. Those are going to be removed. But this will give us a basic back plate that'll cover the back of the tweeter. But what I'd like to do is make something that slips over the back of the tweeter, so when it's screwed into place it kind of holds it and these wires pop up through it. We'll just spread these apart and cut them. And so to do that, we're going to copy the circle, create a new layer. We're going to paste that in place. I'm going to change the color to another bright color, and then change the size just to make it a little bigger. And I need these holes here where the wire is going to come through. Right, so I know this just looks like a bunch of lines right now, but now that we kind of have the idea of what we want, now we're going to make some sense of it. I do have to do one other thing, which is add the screw holes. So now we got a whole bunch of stuff going on. Alright, so now let's just watch and we will come up with a working plan. this will be the back piece here. So this will be what sits on top of the tweeter. And this will be what sits beneath it. So the two pieces will sandwich on top of one another. The first step is to make sure that this fits into place, which it does. The screw holes are good. See if the tweeter is going to fit. Well, it looks like our cardboard piece is the right size. We're gonna print this one out of some acrylic and see how it fits with the acrylic. So with the print done, the first go around, I made the back plate out of 1/8 inch and the side plates out of 1/8 inch as well. And after putting them together and looking at them, I decided to 1/8 inch wasn't gonna work and I needed to use 1/4 inch. So these two will stack on top of each other just like this. And then I can glue them together and create this guy right here, which I can then remove the paper backing on both sides now that the glue has dried. The little holes, the holes here are for the speaker wire. Pulls it through. This snaps into place and then lines up with the factory studs. And there we have it. Our new Focal tweeter is mounted in place. Let's head over to the car and I'll show you what we're doing to wire these things up. Our tweeters are marked black and red, which will match up to our black and red here. And then this is designed to slide back in place. And when the speakers are all put in, this is what it will look like. I love that factory look. That way when people look in here, they won't know there's anything done. They'll just be like, oh yeah, he didn't do anything of this. Don't bother me, I'm factory. Now it's time to figure out where and how we're gonna install the amplifier into this vehicle. The amplifier of choice is the Arc Audio Blackbird, and the area in which we are going to mount it is here underneath the driver's front seat. As you can see, we've already unbolted the seat and folded it up, and there is a ton of room for it to be situated in. However, we just need to figure out, does it go here, does it go there, is it up here? I don't know. But before we can do all that, let's head over to the bench. Let's unbox the amplifier and talk a little bit about it so you guys know what it is we're putting in. This is the Arc Audio Blackbird. It is a 1000-watt, 8-channel DSP amplifier with 4 dedicated RCA outputs. Taking a look inside the box. First up is this big harness here. This is the speaker output harness. One of the unique things about this particular harness is if we take a closer look, we'll notice where it has this red wire here is positive, and it goes positive and then it skips, positive, and it skips and skips. All of these wires on the top here are positive. If we flip the harness over, it's going to be black, then skip, black, then skip, black, then skip. All of these wires down here are negative. What that means is that one of the wires is going to have the indication for the polarity that the wire is. So for example, this one is going to have the black, so we know this is black, and that this is going to be positive because the black stripe is here. Just like if we grab the red stripe wire, we know this is going to be a positive and the other side will be a negative. The reason why they do it that way is if you want to bridge the amplifier, the red stripe on the corresponding set, so let's say channel 1 and channel 2, the red stripe is positive for bridging and the black stripe is negative for bridging. The thought is it'll make it a little bit easier if deciding to bridge the amplifier, which we'll be doing onto our subwoofer, so channel 7 and 8 we'll be using that red and that black wire. Let's move the amp out of the way for a minute and take a look at what else comes in here. A serial number sticker, the USB programming cable, and then this bag here. These are going to be our 2 input cables. One, this wired version here, is just for high level input, maybe. This one here is our RCA input. Positive and negatives are located in the same place. Channels are located in the same place. The only difference is this is a speaker wire and this has a female RCA on the end. We're going to be doing high level, which means we're going to be using this cable here. However, we also use this cable if we're doing low level. I'm not a big fan of having this like this. I want it to be staggered, so this makes it kind of difficult, and I don't like this. So what we'll do is we actually use this, we twist them together, and then we'll run these up, and then we'll solder our own male RCAs into it so that it can go into whatever source unit it's going to be powered by. Pro tip. We'll put this back in the box. Now let's take a look at the amplifier itself. It is a very compact amplifier by design. This is not made to be flashy and hey, look at me. me, although it does have a very striking appeal to it in its basic simplicity. It is made to be put in a place like we're putting it, behind a panel under a seat. This is AR compliant, which means if this was an iData AR vehicle, we could plug directly into this by taking the factory amplifier out in an AR module, and we're in business. So this has all three options available to it as far as integration goes: high level, low level, and AR. But that had a direct reflection on how the amplifier was conceived and its look. They kept it very simple, very compact, so that it could go in those locations. But it has a ton of features, which we could see when we look on the side of the amplifier here. Starting on the left side of the amplifier, the input connector is located right here. Take note, it starts with number 1 and ends with number 8. The BTM controller plugs in here. We have an optical input, auto sense, DC off or signal. We'll switch it now to DC. It's important to do that now because your speaker plug sits on top of it like this. It makes it very hard to see after it's installed, and if your amplifier isn't turning on because you haven't selected the proper input, let's just say it can be a bit annoying. Output plug is located above it, as we said. It starts with number 8 and goes to number 1. The reason why this is important is because, remember, over here it starts at 1 and goes to 8. So these two are flipped on one another. So when connecting them, keep that in mind. They give you the bridge diagram here. You have the AXP input, the PSC input, our LR1 remote input that we'll be using. The USB input for programming is located here. Above that is our remote in, remote out. Make sure if connecting other amplifiers in conjunction with this, you use the remote out to power those. So come directly into this and then go out. In this case, because we were using DC offset, we would just use the out to turn on any amplifiers we ever added to in the future. And then profile 1 and profile 2 allow you to connect a toggle switch, allow you to do a manual preset change if you're not using any one of the controllers that do that. Channels 11 and 12 and 9 and 10 are located here. 4-gauge power and ground input, as well as the 90 amps of fusing, and the white connector here is our iData input. And like I said, very small, very compact, but tons of options for you to choose from. Let's get this over to the car and come up with a plan as far as how we plan on building the amp rack to mount this. This is the space for the amplifier. Air vents, seat rails, and this is the amplifier. My thinking is I want to put it somewhere in this area right here. Keeps it out of the way of the vent. And just the way this is shaped underneath here, this is, to me, this pocket just seems like the perfect place to put it. I toyed with the idea of putting it like here in this area. That moves it farther back into the foot area. Over here, it just seems to hide perfect out of the way. For mounting, I have this spot right here, and this is also the ground screw next to it. So I can attach my amplifier here, and I can use the back seat brace as a mount instead of coming all the way up front here to this front, because this has got a bunch of bends in it. And so some scratch paper and a pen and a tape measure, and that'll get me started. Coming to the back area here and up to the front area where I want this to screw in is about 22 inches. And what I like to do is kind of draw the shape on how I want it to be first. So we know there's going to be a long line here on the side, and then it's going to indent, go to the little tooth that's going to stick out, come down and come over, and then I have my air vent here. And I'm thinking about giving me some real estate in this because there's a line in the carpet, so that will make this come out, go down, and that will bring me to this area and back to the leg. So this gives me a rough sketch of what I want the shape to look like, and now I can add in my numbers, 22 being how long it needs to be. Now we need to figure out the widest point, and to do that we'll start with what would be the shortest point. So how far out do we want to make this? Now, way over here is a crease in the line, which is where the seat stops. If I come in an inch from that, that makes it 9 inches. We can get the amp out of the way. So we'll say this area here for that space is 9 inches. And then if I move that over and come to that, that's about 12 inches. Come back to my 9, and now I need to figure out where this is. So if I'm coming from here, about 2 1/4, and we'll say 4 1/4. Notice I'm drawing the arrows in where I took the measurement, so I know how to measure. Once I get over to the saw, the next one I need is this. If I come here, it's at 6, so that's 3. So this guy is going to be 3 inches. And now we need to come and get the measurements the other way. So this is going to be 6 inches from the back to this first bend, and then out to the AC where the 12, that's going to be 11 1/2. 11 1/2. This, and then this is going to stop here at, we'll say 19. This convoluted piece of paper that I've just put together with all these numbers on it, this allows me to then take this over, and I know my maximum size is 22 by 12. I can cut that out, and then I can transcribe all these measurements onto it by the arrows, knowing if I start at this end, go up 6, go up 11 1/2, go up 19, I can get all my diagonals. And then if I come from the straight side over 9, that'll give me my first piece here, and then if I draw that line up and come over 2 1/4 and 4 1/4, I'll get my little tooth there, right? Makes total sense. I'm sure it does. And here is the final piece. After doing some test fitting, I had to put in a flange here to compensate for the flange here on this, because I wanted it to fit nice and snug. I took my heat gun at the very end and heated up this piece, and then put it in the car and let the seat sit on top of it to give me my final bend. And I did have to notch the top here for the screw that's the ground that's located right here, as well as this big guy here. I needed to add a provision to notch that. I rounded this corner to match the angle here at this corner, and when I drop it all in place, what I end up with is an amp rack, and my amp can come in and sit just like so. That'll allow me to bring in my power and grounds this way, and then all my signals can come into this area and go underneath the vent and head up into the dash area, keeping everything nice and clean and simple. And then I can add a screw here to bolt this down into place. Sounds like a perfect plan. What I'm probably going to do is router a hole here so that my power wires just dump down in, because I want to get this ground point and I don't want to drag it across the front where you can see it. I'll just attach it to the back side of the amp rack and come probably through this hole over here and attach into this. My power wire will come up and just come into the amplifier, and then the signal wires will just be draped over through here. I'll probably do the same hole through the bottom for the bass knob wire to locate that also underneath, because this is all hollow up underneath here, so I do have room. And then I'll mount the amplifier in what looks like about 1/4 inch from this side and 1/4 inch from the back side, and that'll put the amp just right in the right position. Let's head over to the bench and we'll start getting this thing wired up. Anytime you're going to be working with any form of plastic, it's probably good for wood too, but I'm not putting wood underneath the seat. You need to pre-drill your holes for your screws. Don't just try to drill right into this material. It doesn't like that. It doesn't work like wood, where it wants to, you know, push itself out. It's very dense. It doesn't like that. Blown PVC, you can kind of get away with it, but it still really doesn't like it. We have our 4 screw holes for the amplifier here, and then these are going to be our power wire, the bass knob, and the subwoofers are going to fall through this hole. They'll all be going underneath it. The rest of them will be coming over the top. Now, to make my life easy, I will set this up on a riser so that I don't bend this leg. And that gets us the first step of the journey. On the back side of this, these are pretty sharp and pointy. I like to take my grinder and grind these flush so that I don't accidentally add any more damage to my body. There we go. The only input I have to use on this is input 1. Everything is going to come from that. And that is these 2 little wires way over here. The rest of these are not going to be used. Now this is one of those things where it's like, okay, well I don't want to cut them off and I don't want to lose them, but I don't need all of this on there, and I definitely can't leave the ends like this. We have to shrink it up just a little bit, so we'll remove the soldered ends here, and then, because I'm paranoid, I will put 1/16 inch little tiny pieces of heat shrink over the ends, and I will start with these 2 like so. I'll grab the next 2, and just like I had talked about, I don't like to have a big ball of RCAs. I don't want a big ball of heat shrink either, so I'll cut these 2 a little shorter, Add the heat shrink to insulate the ends, and so on and so forth until I make it all the way back over to this white wire here. And there we have it. I have the two wires that are my inputs, both left and right, and everything else has a nice insulated end on it. And I can plug that in for right now. One of the thoughts I was having is the load resistor. Most of the time I put it behind the radio, but I'm gonna have to find some place to put it behind there, and that's fine. However, I do have room right here for it, which is awfully appealing. It's like, I could just put it right there. Let me look in the dash real quick. That momentary lapse of reason figured out, we can now move on to our speaker outputs. Flipping the plug upside down, plugging it in, realizing that this is number 1. This is going to be 7 and 8. Put those through here, like so. All right, that gets those out of the way, and then the rest of these can come off and do something like this. Probably just keep them just like this. That way they can go underneath into the area underneath the air vents, and then this will just come more or less just like this. I'm gonna put braided sleeving over this because I really don't want to see any of this. This I'll probably leave just like this until I get inside of here, in which case then I'll insulate it. The same for the subwoofer wire. All right, now since we have our course of action and what we're going to do, we need wire to go up to the front. We have 6 wires that we need for the tweeter mid and mid bass. And then we have 2 sets of wires that we need for the left and right. To do that, we will run the same twisted colors that Fernando ran. How that works, so we'll run a gray and a white, that'll be positive on all of them, with a yellow to be the tweeter. A blue will be our mid, and then we'll run a brown with this for our mid bass, because the white and gray with black will be our input wires. That way we can put them all in the same harness to go up to behind the radio. Need to twist a bunch of wires together. I've twisted up all the wires. It's in this big bundle. I need to pull out the white and blacks and the gray and black, and the rest I'll just set off to the side over here. And these two are going to get attached into here. Add on your heat shrink. Make sure to pay attention to where the black stripe is. I like to roll the wire around in my fingers and watch it change. That way I know which one it is. Add some solder. Let it cool for just a second. Slide the heat shrink over. And done. Repeat the process. Now with both of those ready to go, as I said, I want to put some braided loom over this portion of it here, mainly just to cover all of this nonsense. Add some small pieces of tape just to keep the wire grouped together, about 3 inches apart. You don't want it to be too close because you want to make sure there's plenty of flexibility. It'll just make adding the braided loom easier. So basically something like this. Add the heat shrink on there to finish off the end. There we have it. This will sit just like this. In order to do that, we'll break out the wire ruler and our 9/64 drill bit. Figure out where I want my first zip tie to go. The color for the wire ruler, it comes in 3, blue, green, and orange. And it's clear, and the reason why it's clear is so that you can see through it in order to figure out where your last hole was. And also, if we made it not colored, you'd lose it on your workbench. All right, now we're gonna add in the zip ties for this. And the direction of the zip tie is just as important as anything that you're going to be doing with this. The head on the zip tie has got to go one direction or the other, meaning it's either going to be on this side or it's going to be on this side. Because we're going to be running more wiring on here, we want to make sure that the head is on the outside. That way, if we need to run back through the hole, the head isn't in the way of blocking the hole. Makes sense, right? The other thing to keep in mind is when the head is on the bottom of the material, you have to make sure that you have room for the head. In this case, there's carpet. It is going to be just fine. But if you were going to be putting it on metal or something like that, you might not have room for the head on the back side, in which case you'll want to make sure you put it on the front side, or your panel won't lay flat. The zip ties I'm putting in are not being pulled tight. They're just going into the holes. With all of those in, now we can manhandle the wire a little bit and figure out where we want these things to go. One bit of advice when putting in your zip ties: if the zip tie happens to go over, like, let's say a solder point, don't pull that zip tie super tight. Just put it there if it's there for looks at this case. So just put it on there and leave it loose. You don't want to pull those super tight and run the risk of you accidentally had, let's say, a sharp point in your solder, and now that's going to come through your heat shrink and cause a short. So you do have to apply a little bit of common sense when doing that. Our solder points are way over here, so it worked out perfect. Now we have to add our wiring to these guys, our outputs. And remember, this started with one over here, this starts with one over here. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that this, the clip here, is on the top. With this, the clip is on the bottom. And I only point this out because I've screwed this up. And nothing sucks worse than having to cut it all off and start over again. So pay attention. 1 and 2 are going to be first. 1 and 2 are going to be white with yellow and gray with yellow. The yellow is going to be our negative, and the white and gray are going to be our positive. That means on these two wires, number 1 here, the positive is clear and the negative is striped. And number 2 here, the red is striped and the negative is clear. Add the heat shrink onto the wire first, then strip it, twist the ends, strip and twist the ends to our speaker wires. Number 1 is white with yellow. Grabbing my number 1 here, my clear is positive. Twist those two together, and I have a black stripe that will go off to my yellow. Apply solder. Let it cool for just a minute. We'll work on our second one. Number 2, red, positive is going to be gray. Clear is going to be negative, which will be yellow. Now, if you're this far along in the video and you're wondering where we came up with this color code, white, gray, green, and purple are the 4 standard colors in a harness, just like this. So white is driver's front, gray is passenger front, green is driver's rear, purple is passenger rear. The negatives, why we've chosen, let's say, this color, yellow, is because this is going off to a tweeter. And a tweeter is typically a bright speaker. So we use a bright color to represent that speaker. Blue, mid-range, a little bit more mellow. And then brown, mid-bass. It could either be brown or black. It just depends how we feel that day and what we're doing. Plays a lower frequency. Brown is a more, on a color spectrum, a lower color. That's why we pick the colors we pick. It makes sense and it doesn't. Using a fatter wire like this stuff here, I like to let the solder point cool to the touch before I start to put my heat shrink on it. That allows me to use this smaller heat shrink as opposed to going to a bigger heat shrink. But in order to do that, you have to make sure that this is nice and cool. Otherwise, as you're sliding it over, it will melt a little bit and then you'll get stuck. And there we go. First 2 wires away. I have 4 more to do. And there we have it. Our wires are now attached. I added this piece of shrink wrap here kind of to add like a transition from the way this is laid out into the way this is going to lay out. And I didn't go over the top of these because then it would not be serviceable. That would be silly. Shrink up the shrink wrap. Now these are located at the same length. And so from here, I can bundle these all together and get them up into the dash. And that's really the only wiring I have going that way. These are still waiting to get soldered to the subwire that is already in the vehicle. So we'll do that once we get into the car. The power wire is already in the car, so that will come into here. I do need to add a tip to it. I need to get the base knob plugged in, and I need to get my ground wire taken care of. But before I do all of that, I want to get this all buttoned up and taken care of. And to do that, I need to add some tape to it, which I'm going to start it here after this connection. I don't want to cover this connection with one big run of tape. That would make servicing very difficult. So we'll start with this and add this the whole length. When bundling up wire like this, this is going to create a bundle about the size of a 0 gauge. This is big. You kind of have to, before you just do this, you have to make sure you have room to run something this size. You might not, in which case you're going to want to split it into smaller groups that are easier to tuck into place. Fortunately for us, where this is going to go, this won't be a problem, but that is something to think about before you start bundling stuff up, is make sure you have that room. Otherwise, you're just going to be wasting this tape and you'll have to peel it all off, and that won't be any good. I finished taping up the wire. This piece of tape right here is exterior tape, and this is interior tape. My connections are underneath here. I added in the ground wire, brought it through the hole, and I plugged in my base knob and added a zip tie to hold that in place so it wouldn't get pulled or anything like that. This wire is going to run with these wires up into the car. It is a very long wire, so we'll be shortening it as we go, putting the bulk of it someplace other than in the dash. That means this is now ready to get into the car, finished up, which is to say I need to bring the power wire into this and attach my subwire. So let's hop inside and get it in place. We're gonna take out the package tray underneath the seat. How many bolts do we got?
We have 9.
What size?
10 millimeters.
Let's pull them out. And it should just lift right out. Hey, look what we found underneath the seat.
A screwdriver.
Somebody left us a screwdriver and something else. And we still have some of the factory carpet tape. Now the nice thing is these bolts do not go out into the bottom of the car. These are bracketed, except for, no? Yeah. What was that one attached to? It's like, yeah, that one didn't even matter. Either way, let's take a look at the Fox box that we're gonna get put in here. So here we have it. If we flip the camera up to that, we can see where it says Titan. This is gonna be for those 210s. It is ported back here. There we go. There's the ports. And we have a speaker cup located on this side and one on that side. Let's set it in the vehicle and see how she looks. Now keep in mind, the center console is pushed back still, so there is more room here. How much room do you have on your side? From here? Oh yeah, that's about right. There we go.
You see the H of the tray?
The H?
Yeah, the mark.
Yeah, I do. I see about...
You have like a quarter.
I have about that much. I have that much.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's all the way back. So there we go. It covers the holes that are in the carpet, which is nice. These are designed to take a full-size driver. That's what these plates do. 100% rhino lined. Tremendous amount of air. This thing is gonna slam. We got plenty of room for these ports to breathe on either side. And it looks nice with the Titan logo on the front.
Yeah.
All right, let's get some woofers in this bad boy.
Let's get it.
there it is. And to unpack what we've done, the wires that we talked about, these go up and around and they're into the center console because we had to pull that out. But right now they're just chilling here waiting to go up into the dash. The power wire is located underneath this here and goes out to underneath the hood. And the sub wire is coming out and going along and comes through here and is plugged into the box back here. The box that we saw earlier has a new clip on it that we made instead of the standard push terminals, and that goes into place there. And there's enough wire if he needs to move it around or do whatever he can. And then this goes out to underneath the hood, where it comes through a hole that we made from a factory grommet that we made bigger. So there was a little grommet like this in the wall all by itself. We modified this to fit our wire with our grommet in it. And then the wire comes along the top here. Fernando notched this area to fit the power wire in. It comes over here onto this bracket that we made that he asked me to make him a cool little panel for, so that anybody underneath the hood will know what this is. This of course is the Stinger fuse holder that we use, so this just unsnaps like this, and you can remove the bracket and then snap it back in place if you need to remove this to service the battery and whatnot. Power wire's not hooked up yet, but the amplifier is grounded. There is a factory ground point located right here. So there was one right here. This is a factory point here, but there was a second one right here. So I put mine there, and then we put a nutsert in and bolted this front piece down. The second one will be here underneath the seat bolt, and that is how the amplifier is going to chill out. Next thing I need to do is actually drop this seat down, get the radio and all of those pieces taken care of so that we can get the center console put back in place, get the radio put up into place. And that's just gonna be a bunch of soldering and to the harness that we already created. This guy right here. Unlike the newer version of this plug, the older version came with all of these extra wires that just kind of really get in the way. So we want to remove all of that off of here and get us back to a much cleaner harness, and then separate out the front speakers and the rear speakers. Now when I was testing this, I cut the rear speakers just to make sure that they were in fact where they needed to be, and now I'm going to solder them back together again. And the reason for that is at some point he may want to add rear speakers, and I want to just make sure I have that connection point isolated out. He probably never will. I mean, that's the goal, is to never do that. This is also a really good place to screw up a wiring harness, meaning when you're dealing with rears, you got purple. Purple's a dark color, and purple with a black stripe is an easy color to mistake and get it wrong. I always triple check my purples. With those reattached, we use the JK Narrow exterior tape and cover my wires. When we get to the end, tape on tape wrap. I'm not going to cover up this solder point. Flip the harness around and come at this again from my plug. And get to the end, tape on tape. So that leaves this area right here exposed. Now I'm going to take a different type of tape and I'm going to tape over that. Now what I've done is I've started here and wrapped into the solder point, started here, wrapped into the solder point. That means if I need to, I can unwrap tape and go this way and cut. If I went the other way, I would be unwrapping from this end, so I'd have to strip all of the tape off. I don't want to do that. By changing the medium of tape, now I know exactly where my connection point is. So if I ever do need to come back into this to do anything for the rear, I know that I can just peel this off. I don't have to remove any of the other tape, so I'm not wasting any tape but this small piece here. Now I have the harness that I'm going to be using for this car. I have the output here that is going to go off to my load resistors, and then I have what's going to come from my amplifier to power up my mid bass in the door. And then once that's done, we can hook the power up and turn the system on so that we can then plug the DSP in, because one of the cool things about the ARC Audio is when you power it up for the first time, the software knows that you're powering it up for the first time, and it actually has it attenuated to -68 in the internal volume so that it can't turn on and blow the speakers because it doesn't know what you want to do for your crossovers. So we can turn it on and we can go in and we can dial all that in. I'm gonna jump over into the passenger seat and start getting these wires all soldered up. Join me over there and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all completed. Not much to see now that the wires are done. Here is our clip here. The rest of the wiring is done back there. The reason I went for back there is because this panel here pops up and that allows me to get to everything if I need to without having to pull this whole dash apart, which is kind of nice. I found a really nice place over here to put the LGD to, so that mounted into place. Our other harness is plugged into there. This is that time I've been waiting for. I can snap all of this back together, hook the battery up, and we should be able to turn it on. Yay! The truck is all back together. Everything is in. The box is in under the seat. There's that Titan logo. Looks really nice. Amplifier is in and connected right now to the laptop. Microphone is in place. We're getting ready to set everything up and do the tune on it. But before we get to any of that, there's a bunch of steps that have to go in place first. The software comes with a very general tune on it, but the thing I was talking about the other day, as we can see here, the volume is down, which is good because we have it on. We're not playing any source yet, but we don't want to play any music in here yet. Now we have to set this up. So the first step is setting in our input-output settings. How I like to set it up is go to Tools, Mixture Assistant, select all off on both sides, and then for this we're just using inputs 1 and 2, and they are going to feed all of our outputs. I'm going to turn on inputs 1 and 2 that pass through super bass. Those are going to be for the mid bass. Go to my outputs. The first 4 are channels 1 through 4, and then the next 2, channels 7 and 8. The last 2 are subwoofers. And for this one, we're going to be doing some de-equalization. For that, we are going to be using channels 8 and 9. And so I'm just going to turn these on as a pass-through. This is going to give us a feed out of the RCAs into an IRTA2 to an iPad so that we can see what the factory radio is doing. We'll be shutting those off in the end. All right, so that sets up our input-output. Get out of there. I'm going to back up here a minute because I want to label all of my settings. Going back to device settings, we are bridging 7 and 8. Now that we have all of those set up, go to our main output page under remotes, and we need to set up the LR1 for subwoofer, and there's a min-max adjustment for it on how low and how high you want it to go. Now we can go into our crossovers. That just sets up our basic channel routing, where the subwoofer level is going to do, and names our channels. So now on the side of the DSP, we know what channels are which. The tweeters, we need a high pass. We can drag the slider, or we can type it in. And as long as this green checkbox is on, it will automatically do both left and right channels at the same time. The next high pass is going to be for the mid-range, which we'll type in, and then a low pass for the top to match up to the tweeter. Mid-bass, high pass, and the low pass to match up to the mid-range. And you can change the crossover slopes if you would like. And subwoofer, you need a low pass. For our tuned output, we're going to make sure the slopes are set to flat. Next on the list is delay and polarity. With an ARC Audio DSP currently, measure the speakers and then you have to do some math. You have to subtract every speaker from the farthest speaker, which is usually going to be the passenger mid-bass, and enter that in currently when this is being filmed. They're working on changing that, adding a calculator to it, but for right now we have to do it the old-fashioned way, which is, you know, math. Enter in all your math. This page you're looking at now is called the plot. You get to it by clicking Tools, Plot. What the plot does is pull up all of the information that you've just set up depending on what boxes are clicked here, and then you can turn them on and off simply by touching the top here. This allows you to go through and check to make sure that the crossover data that you put in is the same for all of the speakers. And then you can look at them all. This line here across the top is showing us outputs 9 and 10 because we have nothing attached to that. You can also check out the levels, fader, polarity, simply by touching here. Right now none of that is done, but this at least just gives us the ability to see all kinds of funness and do a little check, just like in math you check your work. This allows us to check our work. The first two things are done now. Equalizer is next, along with levels, tone control. But before we get to all of that, we need to jump into the car, check this, make sure we have sound, as well as do a polarity check to make sure all the speakers that we have in there are the right polarity. Turn up the volume so that we'll have audio. To do the polarity check, we'll grab the PT9A Plus, hop in the vehicle. When using a DSP while doing polarity testing, one of the advantages of being able to shut off all other speakers so that you can test just that one. It helps to minimize any false reads. Like right now we're playing the tweeter, and that gives us a green. We can mute that. Go to the mid-range, which is extremely close to it. Those two match, which is good. And because we're doing 24 dB link widths, we want them all to be the same color, either all reds or all greens. This is the caveat in this one, because we're keeping the factory rear speakers in there. We're gonna be fading it all the way to the front, but there might be an opportunity where he gets frisky and fades it to the rear. So with that in mind, we also wanna check to see what the rear speakers are doing, so that if he fades them back on, we don't get some weird like, what's going on? And those are green as well. Now some of the disadvantages of doing that are gonna be, these are gonna get way louder, way faster than the DSP. The DSP amplifier is gonna be more linear than the amplifier that's built into the factory radio. So what might happen at low volumes, these are just like, oh my gosh, so much louder. And then as you're ramping up these amplified speakers, they're just gonna keep getting louder and louder and louder, and these are gonna just start to distort and be crappy. So the best bet is to just not use them, but you can if you want. Now that we have the polarity test done, we can move on to the EQing of the car. Our microphone is in place, our software is running. We are using the audio controlled DMRTA. We're going to start by EQing in a specific order. We're gonna EQ that tweeter, then this tweeter, that mid-range, then this mid-range, that mid-bass, then this mid-bass. Now, along the way, we're gonna go tweeter, tweeter, both tweeters, mid-range, mid-range, both mid-range, tweeters, mid-range. Then we're gonna do mid-range, mid-bass, mid-bass, both mid-bass. All speakers, so it's a whole little process that's gonna happen. And along the way, we'll make minor adjustments as needed. Let's take a look at what all that looks like now. All right, so we got a lot to unpack with the tune. Let's just kind of break it down. The first thing is we needed to de-EQ the system, meaning get rid of any nonsense that was there so that we could then re-EQ it. Sometimes that seems counterproductive. This is where the kicker key lock comes in handy. If you want to skip this step, you just go with the key lock, let it do it. Most high-end DSPs will give you the ability. Some will do it automatically. Most of them you're manually going to do it in some way. But if you just want to skip it all together, that's what the key lock is for. The ARC Audio software, you're going to manually do it, and that's where the IRTA2 comes into play. We run the signal from channels 9 and 10 into the IRTA, and we can get a visual of them. And that's the driver's side, this is the passenger side, and that little nightmare right there is the two of them combined. This spot here and here are our biggest issues. We need to get rid of those. This is, as it turns out, some form of delay. We have an input delay operation that we can go into. We found out it was 6. Enter And that just took care of all of that. Next, we'll head back into the laptop and go to the equalizer portion of it. And we've done a whole bunch of equalization, and right now it's all bypassed, but if we turn it on, what we end up with is something that looks a little bit more reasonable. There's before and there's after. Some of these, when we remove them here, it adversely affected the way it sounded in the car. Like it was boosted for a reason. So instead of going back and reboosting it in the other EQ, it just made sense to add it back in using this software. That was fun. We got that out of the way. Now let's take a look at the actual equalization work that we did and take a look at that on the RTA output. So what we're looking at now on this side is the final tune before we get into it and do any level adjustments as far as blending, mid-range, mid-bass, tweeter. This is just the equalization side of it. Looking at the EQ, we can go back to Tools, Plot, and we can turn off crossovers and turn on equalization, and we can hit all of it, and we can just see this here as our equalization curve. We can see this guy right here is the subwoofer. I like to add what I call punch bass, which is a 45 hertz wide Q 6 dB boost. It adds that fun to the music. If we remove that, now everything looks normal. So there was just a little bit of boost here at this one frequency, otherwise everything was a cut. The level control isn't in here yet. If we add in levels, we can see some of the level adjustments. This level adjustment is for matching the RTA level. For example, we'll look at the passenger side tweeter is here, and we'll look at the driver's side tweeter is there. The driver's side tweeter is closer. It came in a little hotter. We've brought the level down instead of just removing all of that in equalization. It's just easier to bring the level down to the points match up and then bring it down from there. What we'll do now is we'll get in and we'll do a final level control where we'll check our blending and make sure we're getting the right volume out of each pair of speakers. And this is where that plot tool comes in very handy. We can also add in the crossover here, goes out of there, and levels is located right here. One of the nice things is I can group levels, and I've already done that because I've already started to do level adjustment for the RTA. And so group 1 right now is the left and right tweeter, group 2 is the left and right mid, group 3 will be my mid bass, and as you can see here there is already some left and right done. There again, this is just looking at the RTA software to come up with the curve that I like. I'm gonna hop in the vehicle now and do my final listening, make sure my center and everything else is where I'd like it. I'll let Fernando jump in and we'll see what he thinks. I got the customer here. We're gonna give him the tour. He's excited. You excited?
I'm very excited.
He's about ready to be super disappointed. All right, come on over here. Okay, so battery, looking at right here. So there's a nut underneath here that's factory nut. So
yes.
But to get this off, you can just do this. Okay.
That's nice.
And then we put audio fuse on here so that they'll know what it is.
Yep.
There's outlets on either side,
Uh-huh.
and it just made more sense to go to the driver's side than the passenger side, even though the battery was on that side, just because the way the airbox is. And it's like, for now, grab a light.
Especially if you have to go back in.
Alright, so if you look back here, you can see where the amplifier is.
Oh wow. He's so excited. Away from the heat vents too. So.
Well, you know, okay, so everyone always talks about heat vents, cold vents, air vents, but let's be honest, okay? The amplifier is going to react, it's aluminum, to the environment that it's in, right?
Sure.
So if it's cold enough for you to turn on your heat, guess what? That amplifier is really cold. So the heat will probably warm it up and get it functioning faster. And so on the box,
Okay.
we made a custom speaker cup.
Oh, nice.
With a quick disconnect. Bass knob went over there in that one empty spot you had on the dash.
Nice.
Fits perfect.
I didn't even see it till you showed it.
I know. Oh, and the fender. So
Those actually came out really good.
I don't mind it.
No, I don't either.
Fernando's picky, so he was like, I'm going, dude. I mean, look at the door. I mean,
Right.
let's hop in, and we're gonna give him a listen. You don't get to come. Well, we'll get a reaction video. We just spent, I don't know, better part of 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Listen to dozens of songs. Not the whole song. Nobody listens to the whole song during a demo, right?
No. Nobody ever listens.
I mean, I have a hard enough time driving and listening to the whole song.
All right.
You know, because it's like, okay.
Okay, next.
All right, 20 seconds? What are you going to give me in 20 seconds? Nothing. Anyways, what do you think?
Unbelievable. These guys are crazy. This is crazy. And I promise you, they did my last system, and this blows it out of the water. This is unbelievable.
And I will say, when we were doing the demo, and I should have recorded doing the demo, because it's just always great to see like people go,
And that's what it was.
yeah, it was. This is funny. And like I said, I don't normally do this. You guys know that. But I thought it'd be fun. He was here, and we're still in the install bay. We haven't even exited the install bay. So I was like, hey, you're not doing anything. Let's take a listen to it and film a thing. Right? Cool. Well, this job is done. And normally Fernando would do the ending at this point, because I know we kind of said, hey, we're gonna, and then Fernando, and he did, but then he had to go pick up his kid, and you were here. You want to play the role of Fernando in this one?
Sure.
So you know what he says at the end of our video?
I don't remember.
It's okay. It's on to the next one.
On to the next one.
It was an accident. We ran into it. Now it just works.
Gotcha.
All right. So, Fernando.
On to the next one.
Boom. There you go.